The blood trickled warm down Rose's cheek as her father's ring caught her skin, the metallic taste reaching her lips before she could wipe it away. This had become her ritual each evening when Edward Parker staggered home from the Silver Dollar Saloon in Cottonwood Springs, Colorado, 1876, a territory still wild enough that a man beating his daughter raised fewer eyebrows than a woman traveling alone. "You're just like her," Edward roared, his whiskey breath hot against her face as he gripped her arm. "Just like your no-good mother who left us both." Rose Parker had once counted the bruises that bloomed across her skin like prairie wildflowers after spring rain. She had stopped counting at 19, the age she had now reached. 4 years since her mother's death, not abandonment as her father claimed in his drunken delusions, and Rose had become both caretaker and target for a man consumed by grief and whiskey. "Pa, please," she whispered, backing toward the fireplace of their small cabin. "Let me fix you something to eat." "Don't need food," he slurred, swaying on his feet. "Need you to show some respect." His hand came down again, this time missing her face but catching her shoulder hard enough to send her stumbling backward into the crude wooden table. The plate she'd set earlier crashed to the floor. "Look what you made me do," he shouted, his logic twisted by liquor. "Always making a mess." Outside, the autumn fog rolled thick through the valley, obscuring the mountains that had once felt like protection to Rose but now seemed more like prison walls. The nearest neighbor lived 3 miles away, too far to hear her cries, too distant to witness what happened behind closed doors. Rose tried to steady herself, to find the words that might calm him as she sometimes could. "Pa, remember how you taught me to mend fences last spring? How proud you were." For a moment, his eyes seemed to clear, a glimpse of the father he had once been, the man who had taught her to ride horses and read by lamplight. But the whiskey had too strong a hold, and his face darkened once more. "Your mother never appreciated what I built here either," he growled, reaching for the half-empty bottle on the mantel. "Nobody does." As he tipped the bottle back, Rose edged toward the door. She had learned that sometimes escape was the only option, fleeing to the barn until his rage burned out or he passed into unconsciousness. Tonight, the fog would cover her retreat, but Edward Parker was quicker than she anticipated. His hand shot out, catching her hair and yanking her backward with such force that she cried out. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded, his words slurring together. "Always running like a scared rabbit, just like her." "I'm not running," Rose lied, her heart pounding. "Just getting more firewood." "Liar." His open palm struck her cheek, and she tasted blood again. In the 4 years since her mother's passing from pneumonia, Rose had endured her father's transformation from a stern but loving parent to this monster whiskey had created. She had convinced herself it was her duty to stay, to care for him, to hope that someday he would return to the man he once was. Tonight, as his fist connected with her ribs, she wondered if that man was gone forever. She collapsed to the floor, curling instinctively to protect herself as she had learned to do. Edward stood over her, his breathing heavy, his fists clenched. "Get up," he commanded. "You're pathetic lying there." Rose tried to rise, her body trembling. Outside, the wind had picked up, moaning around the cabin's corners like a ghost. Through her tears, she noticed something odd: hoofbeats, approaching through the fog, an unusual occurrence this far from town at this late hour. Edward heard it too, his attention momentarily diverted. "Who the hell would be out in this weather?" he muttered, staggering toward the window. The hoofbeats grew louder, more distinct. Not a traveler passing by, but someone approaching their isolated cabin with purpose. A sharp knock rattled the cabin door. "Who's there?" Edward called, his voice suddenly wary. "Name's Owen Campbell," came a deep voice from outside. My horse picked up a stone, saw your light through the fog. Rose struggled to her feet, wiping blood from her lip with her sleeve. A stranger meant her father would temporarily restrain himself. Appearances still mattered to him. "Pa, let me," she whispered, moving toward the door, grateful for any interruption. Edward grabbed her arm, his fingers digging painfully. "Fix yourself up first," he hissed. "Don't want folks talking." Rose hastily wiped her face and smoothed her skirt before Edward released her to open the door. The fog swirled around the man standing on their porch, giving him an otherworldly appearance. Tall and broad-shouldered, he stood with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to handling himself in difficult situations. His dark hat was pulled low, shadowing his features, but Rose could make out a strong jaw covered with several days' growth of beard. He wore a long duster coat, dampened by the fog, and behind him, his horse, a magnificent buckskin, waited patiently. "Evening," the stranger said, his eyes quickly taking in the scene before him: Rose's swollen lip, the overturned chair, Edward's unsteady stance. Nothing in his expression changed, but Rose sensed his assessment. "What do you want?" Edward demanded, placing himself between Rose and the doorway. "Like I said, horse picked up a stone, noticed your light. Been riding since dawn and could use a place to water my horse, maybe rest a spell before moving on." The stranger's voice was calm, unhurried. Edward hesitated, clearly not wanting company but aware that turning away a traveler wasn't done in these parts. Hospitality was a code even he typically honored. "Fine," he grumbled. "Barn's out back, water troughs full." "Obliged," Owen said, tipping his hat slightly. His eyes met Rose's briefly, and she felt something unfamiliar, recognition of a sort, though she knew they'd never met. As Edward reluctantly stepped aside, Owen nodded toward Rose. "Madam, this is my daughter," Edward said, the words a warning. "Rose." "Miss Parker," Owen acknowledged formally. "I'll show you to the barn," Rose offered quickly, grabbing her shawl from the peg by the door. Anything to escape the cabin's suffocating atmosphere. "Rose," her father's voice was low, threatening. "You come right back. Here." "Yes, Pa," she answered softly. Outside, the fog enveloped them, providing a strange privacy. Owen led his horse a few paces before speaking. "Your father always that hospitable?" he asked quietly, his voice betraying no emotion. Rose stiffened. "He's had a difficult day. Seems like you've had a worse one." Owen stopped, turning to face her. In the diffused moonlight filtering through the fog, she could see his features more clearly, eyes the color of a summer sky, lines at their corners suggesting he smiled often, though he wasn't smiling now. "It's not your concern, Mr. Campbell," she said, straightening her shoulders despite the pain in her ribs. "No," he agreed easily. "It isn't." They walked in silence to the barn, where Rose lit a lantern hanging by the door. The familiar smell of hay and horses welcomed her, this place having become her sanctuary on many nights. "Water trough is there," she pointed. "There's grain in that barrel if your horse needs it." Owen removed his horse's saddle with practiced efficiency. "Thank you. This is Jack, by the way." Best horse a man could ask for. Rose approached cautiously, extending her hand to the buckskin, who nudged it gently. "He's beautiful." "He's got good judgment too," Owen said, watching her. "About people." Rose stroked the horse's velvety nose, finding comfort in the animal's calm presence. "I should get back. Your father seems concerned about your whereabouts," Owen observed, his tone carefully neutral. "He worries," Rose said automatically, the lie familiar on her tongue. "Is that what caused that cut on your cheek? His worry?" Rose's hand flew to her face, her cheeks burning with shame. "I fell." Owen said nothing, just reached into his saddlebag and withdrew a clean handkerchief, offering it to her. "For your lip." She took it hesitantly. "Thank you. How long has he been hitting you, Miss Parker?" His directness startled her. "Mr. Campbell, you're a stranger passing through. This isn't your business." "True enough," he acknowledged, turning his attention back to his horse. "Been riding circuit with the marshal's office. Seen a fair share of folks who have fallen just like you." Rose's heart quickened. "You're a lawman, Deputy U.S. Marshal," he confirmed, though he showed no badge. "Based out of Denver, but I cover this territory." "There's no law broken here," Rose said defensively, though she knew that wasn't entirely true. "My father has no right to treat you that way," Owen finished firmly. "No man does." "You don't understand," Rose whispered. "He wasn't always like this. My mother died 4 years ago and he started drinking," Owen supplied. "Lost himself in grief and whiskey." Rose blinked back tears. "Yes, doesn't excuse it." His voice was gentle but certain. "He's my father, I can't just leave him." "Can't you?" Owen asked, his blue eyes studying her intently. The question hung between them, one Rose had asked herself countless times over the years. The answer had always seemed clear: she had nowhere to go, no money of her own, no family to take her in. And somewhere, beneath the whiskey and rage, the father she had loved still existed, or so she had believed. "I should go back," she said finally, turning toward the barn door. "Rose," Owen called softly. She paused, unused to hearing her name spoken with such care. "If you wanted to leave, there are options." She shook her head. "Not for me. I'm riding to Silver Creek tomorrow. It's a day's journey. They need a school teacher there. The last one married and moved east." His words were casual, but his meaning clear. "I'm not qualified to teach. You can read and write." When she nodded, he continued, "That's more than some who have taken such positions. Towns desperate enough they wouldn't ask too many questions." Rose felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in years, hope, quickly extinguished by reality. "He wouldn't let me go." "I didn't suggest asking permission," Owen said quietly. Before Rose could respond, her father's voice bellowed from the cabin. "Rose, get back here now." "I have to go," she whispered, hurrying toward the door. Owen didn't try to stop her. "I'll be leaving at first light," was all he said. Rose returned to the cabin, where Edward had consumed more whiskey in her absence. His rage, temporarily subdued by the stranger's presence, returned full force. "What were you doing out there so long?" he demanded, grabbing her arm. "Just showing him the barn, Pa, making sure his horse was settled." "Making eyes at him, more like," Edward accused. "Just like your mother, always looking for a way out." "That's not true," Rose protested. "About me or Ma. She loved you." His hand struck her face again, harder this time. "Don't you speak of her, you don't know anything." Rose stumbled backward, her patience finally snapping. "I know she didn't leave us. She died. She got sick and died while you were in town drinking." Edward's face contorted with fury. "You ungrateful!" His fist came toward her, but this time, Rose ducked. 4 years of abuse had taught her to anticipate his movements. She darted around him, but he caught her skirt, yanking her back. "You're not going anywhere," he growled, his breath hot and sour. "Not ever." In that moment, Rose saw her future stretched before her, years of this, until either the whiskey took him or his rage finally went too far. The realization crystallized with terrible clarity. She would die here if she stayed. With strength born of desperation, she shoved him hard. Unprepared and unsteady from drink, Edward fell backward, crashing into the table. Rose didn't wait to see if he would rise. She ran for the door, fleeing into the fog-shrouded night. The cool mist enveloped her as she raced toward the barn, her heart pounding in her chest. Behind her, she heard her father's curses as he stumbled after her. She had never defied him so openly, and she knew his rage would be terrible. The barn door stood partly open, a sliver of lantern light spilling out. Rose burst through to find Owen Campbell sitting on a hay bale, cleaning his revolver by lamplight. He looked up sharply at her entrance, instantly alert. "He's coming," she gasped. "Please." Owen was on his feet immediately, the weapon reassembled with practiced speed. "Get behind me." Edward Parker appeared in the doorway, his face contorted with rage. When he saw Owen standing protectively before Rose, he faltered momentarily. "This doesn't concern you, stranger," he slurred. "That's my daughter and she's coming back to the house." "The lady doesn't seem inclined to go with you," Owen replied, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. "Lady," Edward laughed harshly. "She's a disobedient child who needs discipline." "She's a grown woman," Owen countered, "and from what I can see, she's had enough of your kind of discipline." Edward's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell do you think you are, coming onto my property and interfering in my family? Told you." "Owen Campbell, Deputy U.S, Marshal." This time, he moved his coat aside to reveal the badge pinned to his vest. "And I don't much care for men who beat women, especially their own daughters." Edward's hand moved toward his waistband, where Rose knew he kept a small pistol. "You got no jurisdiction here. This is family business." "Assault is the law's business, wherever it happens," Owen said evenly, his own hand hovering near his holstered weapon. "I suggest you go back to your cabin, sleep off that whiskey, and reconsider your behavior toward your daughter." Edward sneered. "Or what? You'll arrest me for disciplining my own child under my own roof." "She's not a child," Owen said, his voice hardening. "And yes, I have the authority to arrest you for assault." For a tense moment, Rose thought her father would draw his weapon. Instead, he spat on the ground. "She's worthless anyway, just like her mother. Take her if you want, she'll bring you nothing but trouble." With that, he turned and staggered back toward the cabin, disappearing into the fog. Rose stood trembling, tears streaming down her face. Relief and grief warred within her, relief at her escape, grief for the father she had once known and lost to whiskey. "He'll be back once he realizes I meant it," she whispered. "He always does." Owen turned to her, his expression gentle but determined. "Do you want to stay? Or do you want to leave?" The question hung between them, more significant than any Rose had faced before. To stay meant continuing the only life she knew, hoping her father would someday change. To leave meant venturing into the unknown, trusting this stranger who had intervened on her behalf. "I don't know you," she said finally. "Why would you help me?" Owen's eyes held her steadily. "Because it's right, and because I've seen what happens to women who stay in situations like yours. It rarely ends well." Rose glanced toward the cabin, barely visible through the fog. "Everything I have is here." "What do you have, Rose?" Owen asked quietly. Besides pain and fear, his words struck deep, exposing the truth she had been unwilling to face. What did she have? A father who had become a monster, a home that had become a prison, a life that had become mere survival. "If I came with you," she said slowly, "to Silver Creek." "What then?" "Then you start over," Owen replied simply. "You find work teaching if that suits you. You make a life that's yours." "And you, what do you get from this?" Owen smiled slightly. "The satisfaction of doing my job, protecting those who need protection." Rose studied him, searching for deceit or ulterior motives. She found none, only a straightforward concern that seemed genuine. "We'd have to leave now," she said finally, "before he comes back." Owen nodded, already reaching for his saddle. "Can you ride?" "Yes, we have a mare in the back stall." "Get her ready. Bring only what you absolutely need. We'll travel faster with less." Rose moved quickly, saddling the gentle mare she had raised from a foal. Her hands trembled as she gathered a small bundle, a change of clothes, her mother's Bible, a locket containing her parents' portraits from happier times. Everything else she would leave behind. When she returned to the front of the barn, Owen had Jack saddled and ready. He helped secure her bundle to the mare's saddle, then checked both horses one last time. "Your father has a rifle," Rose warned. "If he sees us leaving—" "The fog will cover us," Owen assured her, "and he's too drunk to aim straight if he did try something." They led the horses from the barn, the thick mist immediately enveloping them. Rose cast one last glance toward the cabin, the only home she had ever known. A single light burned in the window, and for a moment she hesitated. "Second thoughts?" Owen asked quietly. Rose squared her shoulders. "No. I'm ready." They mounted their horses and rode into the darkness, the fog swirling around them like ghostly guardians. Rose expected to hear her father's shouts, perhaps even gunfire, but there was only silence broken by the soft thud of hooves on damp earth. As dawn broke hours later, they emerged from the foggy valley into clear mountain air. Rose looked back to see the mist blanketing the world she had left behind, like nature itself concealing her escape. "How far to Silver Creek?" she asked, her voice hoarse from the cold night air. "We'll be there by sunset if we keep a steady pace," Owen replied. "There's a trading post about midday where we can rest the horses and get something to eat." They rode in companionable silence, the rhythm of the horses' hooves lulling Rose into contemplation. She had left everything she knew, trusted a stranger, and now faced an uncertain future. Fear mingled with a tentative exhilaration. For the first time in years, she was free. When they stopped at a small stream to water the horses, Rose caught her reflection in the clear mountain water. Her lip was swollen, a bruise darkening on her cheekbone. She touched it gingerly. "It'll heal," Owen said, offering her his canteen. "All wounds do, given time, even the ones you can't see," Rose asked softly. Owen's eyes held understanding beyond his years. "Those take longer." "But yes, even those. You sound like you know from experience." He nodded, his gaze distant. "My mother endured a husband much like your father. By the time she found the courage to leave, her spirit was nearly broken. It's why I became a marshal, to help others before it comes to that." "Did she recover?" "Your mother," a smile warmed his face. "She did. Runs a boarding house in Denver now. Happiest woman you'd ever meet." The revelation that he understood, that he had witnessed firsthand what she had endured, created a connection between them that transcended their brief acquaintance. Rose felt the first stirrings of trust taking root. They continued their journey, stopping briefly at the trading post Owen had mentioned. The proprietor, a grizzled man named Jenkins, greeted Owen with friendly recognition. "Campbell, thought you'd be halfway to Denver by now." "Change of plans," Owen replied easily, helping Rose dismount. "Miss Parker, this is Hiram Jenkins. Makes the worst coffee in Colorado Territory, but has the best information." Jenkins' bushy eyebrows rose at the sight of Rose's bruised face, but he asked no questions. "Coffee's hot and food simple, but there's plenty of it." While they ate, Jenkins and Owen discussed trail conditions and local news. Rose remained quiet, uncomfortably aware of curious glances from the few other patrons. When a gruff-looking trader stared too long at her bruises, Owen shifted slightly, placing himself between them. "You heading all the way to Silver Creek today?" Jenkins asked as they prepared to leave. "That's the plan," Owen confirmed. "Miss Parker has prospects there." Jenkins nodded, his eyes kind as they rested on Rose. "Good town. Growing fast since they found that new silver vein. They'll welcome new folks, especially a pretty young lady." Rose blushed at the compliment, unused to kindness from strangers. "Thank you, Mr. Jenkins." Back on the trail, the terrain grew more challenging as they climbed into higher country. The autumn day was clear and crisp, the aspens turning golden against the evergreen backdrop. For Rose, accustomed to the confines of her father's cabin, the vastness of the landscape was both intimidating and exhilarating. "It's beautiful," she breathed, gazing at a valley spread below them. "This is my favorite part of the territory," Owen agreed. "Never gets old, no matter how many times I ride through." "You travel often." "As a marshal. Most of the year I'm on the move," he said. "Following trails, serving warrants, escorting prisoners. It's a solitary life, but it suits me." "Don't you get lonely?" Rose asked, then flushed at her boldness. Owen considered her question thoughtfully. "Sometimes. But then I remember what waits at the end of loneliness, compromises I'm not willing to make." "What do you mean?" "Saw too many men rush into marriages because they couldn't stand their own company," Owen explained. "Those rarely end well. Figure I'd rather be alone than make someone else miserable." "That's unusually considerate," Rose observed. Owen laughed, the sound warming something inside her. "Don't sound so surprised. Some of us menfolk do occasionally think beyond our own needs." Their conversation flowed easier after that, Owen sharing stories of his travels while Rose spoke of the books she had read, her primary escape during the isolated years after her mother's death. They discovered shared interests in literature and history, and Rose found herself laughing for the first time in longer than she could remember. As the sun began its westward descent, they crested a final ridge. Below them lay Silver Creek, a bustling town nestled in a valley, its buildings clustered around a main street with smaller homes spreading outward. "There it is," Owen said. "Your fresh start." Rose felt a flutter of anxiety. What if they don't need a teacher after all? "Jenkins confirmed they're still looking," Owen assured her. "But if that doesn't work out, there's the boarding house. The mercantile growing towns always need capable hands." They rode down into Silver Creek as twilight approached, the town's windows lighting one by one. People moved along the boardwalks, a church bell rang in the distance, and the sounds of a piano drifted from the hotel. It was larger and livelier than the small settlement near her father's cabin, and Rose felt conspicuously out of place. Owen led them to a two-story building with a sign reading Silver Creek Hotel and Dining. After helping Rose dismount, he arranged for their horses to be stabled. "Mrs. Holloway runs this place," he explained as they entered. "She's a friend. She'll help you get settled." The hotel's lobby was modest but clean, with a small sitting area and a front desk where a plump, gray-haired woman looked up from her ledger. "Owen Campbell," she exclaimed warmly. "What brings you back so soon?" "Evening, Mrs. Holloway," Owen greeted her. "This is Miss Rose Parker. She's come about the teaching position." Mrs. Holloway's shrewd eyes took in Rose's bruised face and travel-worn appearance, but her smile remained kind. "Welcome to Silver Creek, Miss Parker. We've been hoping for a qualified teacher to arrive." "I'm not certain I am qualified," Rose admitted hesitantly. "I've never taught formally. Can you read, write, and calculate sums?" When Rose nodded, Mrs. Holloway continued briskly. "That puts you ahead of half the adults in this town. The school board will speak with you tomorrow. For now, you look like you could use a hot meal and rest." Rose felt tears threatening at the woman's matter-of-fact kindness. "Thank you." Mrs. Holloway showed them to a small dining room off the lobby, where several other guests were already eating. "I'll have Maggie bring you supper." "Owen, your usual room is available. Miss Parker, I've put you next door, best rooms in the house, both with views of the mountains." When she had bustled away, Rose turned to Owen. She didn't ask any questions. "Sarah Holloway believes in second chances," Owen said simply. "Her husband was no saint, from what I hear. Since his passing, she's made it her business to help women who need a fresh start." Their meal arrived: hearty stew, fresh bread, and apple pie, the most abundant food Rose had seen in years. As they ate, Owen pointed out various townspeople, giving her a sense of the community. Mayor Whitfield there in the corner, decent man, fair-minded. The fellow in the green vest is Dr. Peterson, town physician, and the lady with him is his wife, Emma, who serves on the school board. Rose tried to absorb it all, feeling overwhelmed by new faces and possibilities. When they finished eating, her exhaustion must have shown, for Owen immediately suggested she retire for the night. "Tomorrow will be soon enough to meet everyone properly," he said, walking her to the stairs. "You've had a long day." At her door, Rose hesitated. "How long will you stay in Silver Creek?" Something flickered in Owen's eyes, reluctance perhaps. "A day or two. Need to file my report about." He gestured vaguely toward her bruised face. "Official business." Rose nodded, disappointment settling in her chest. Of course he would leave, his job required it, and he had already done more than duty demanded by bringing her here. "Thank you," she said formally, "for everything. I don't know how I'll repay your kindness." "No repayment needed," Owen replied. "Just make something good of your chance here. That'll be enough." Inside her room, the largest and most comfortable she had ever occupied, Rose sat on the edge of the bed, emotions flooding through her. Freedom, fear, grief for the father she had once loved, hope for what might lie ahead. And beneath it all, a confusing warmth when she thought of Owen Campbell, the stranger who had risked himself to rescue her. Morning brought clarity with its golden light streaming through her window. Rose dressed in her one change of clothes, painfully aware of how shabby they appeared compared to the well-dressed women she had glimpsed in the dining room. Mrs. Holloway had left a basin of warm water, and Rose gently washed her face, wincing as she touched the bruise. A knock at her door revealed a young maid. "Mrs. Holloway says breakfast is ready, miss, and the school board will meet you at 10 o'clock. In the dining room, Rose found Owen already eating, deep in conversation with a distinguished-looking gentleman. Both men stood as she approached. "Rose," Owen greeted her, "this is Judge Wilson. He's the head of the school board." The judge bowed slightly. "Miss Parker, Marshal Campbell has spoken highly of your educational background." Rose shot a surprised glance at Owen, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Thank you, Judge Wilson. I'm eager to discuss the position." "Excellent. We'll meet at the schoolhouse at 10. It's just down the street, can't miss it." With a tip of his hat, the judge departed. "Educational background?" Rose questioned once they were alone. Owen shrugged, looking slightly abashed. "Might have mentioned your extensive reading and natural aptitude for learning. Also suggested your experience helping raise your younger siblings provided valuable skills for managing a classroom." "I don't have any siblings," Rose pointed out, torn between amusement and alarm. "They don't know that," Owen said with a wink. "Sometimes a person needs a little embellishment to get their foot in the door. The rest is up to you." After breakfast, Owen offered to show her the town before her meeting. Silver Creek was indeed growing rapidly, with new construction evident on several streets. The schoolhouse was a simple but sturdy building near the church, with a bell tower and fresh white paint. "It's lovely," Rose murmured, peering through the windows at the rows of desks. 28 students, ages 6 to 16, Owen informed her. "Town's quite proud of investing in education." As they continued their walk, Rose became aware of curious glances from passers-by. Her bruises, though fading, were still visible. "They're staring," she whispered uncomfortably. "Small towns," Owen said with a shrug. "Everyone's curious about newcomers, but they're good people mostly. They'll accept you once they know you." "And what will they know?" Rose asked. "The truth." Owen considered her question carefully. "That's for you to decide. Your story is yours to tell or keep." His respect for her autonomy touched Rose deeply. Her entire life, decisions had been made for her by her father, by circumstance. Now, this man who had saved her was offering her the dignity of choice. When they reached the schoolhouse again, it was nearly time for her meeting. Several well-dressed men and women were already gathering on the porch. "I should go," Owen said. "This is your moment." Rose felt panic rise. "You're leaving, just for your meeting," he clarified. "Have some business at the marshal's office. I'll find you after." Steeling herself, Rose approached the school board members. To her surprise and relief, they welcomed her warmly, asking thoughtful questions about her educational philosophy rather than her personal history. When Judge Wilson inquired about her journey to Silver Creek, she offered only that she had traveled from a homestead near Cottonwood Springs, accompanied by Marshal Campbell, who had been kind enough to escort her safely. By the meeting's end, Rose had been offered the position, with accommodations in a small cottage behind the school that had housed previous teachers. She would start the following Monday, giving her time to settle in and prepare. Dazed by this sudden turn in her fortunes, Rose walked slowly back toward the hotel. She found Owen waiting in the lobby, his expression brightening when he saw her. "Well," he asked. "They hired me," she said, still scarcely believing it. "I start next week." Owen's genuine smile of pleasure warmed her. "I knew they would. Congratulations, teacher." That afternoon, Mrs. Holloway helped Rose purchase essentials from the mercantile teaching supplies, a few simple dresses, basic household items for her cottage. When Rose protested the expense, Mrs. Holloway waved away her concerns. "The school board provides an allowance for new teachers' setup. Besides, I've arranged credit with Mr. Winters at the store. You can pay it off from your salary." By evening, Rose was installed in her cottage, a tidy 2-room dwelling with a small kitchen, a bedroom, and a sitting area with a fireplace. Simple but clean, it represented more independence than she had ever known. Owen helped carry her purchases and arrange the heavier furniture. As they finished, Rose realized with a pang that his task was complete. He had delivered her safely to a new beginning. There was no reason for him to remain. "When will you leave?" she asked as they stood in her doorway, the setting sun casting long shadows across her small front yard. "Tomorrow morning," he confirmed, his voice neutral. "Need to continue my circuit." Rose nodded, fighting unexpected disappointment. "Of course. You've done more than enough already." Owen studied her face, his blue eyes serious. "Will you be all right here, Rose?" "Yes," she said with more confidence than she felt. "Everyone has been kind. I think I can make a life here." "I believe you can," he said softly. They stood in awkward silence until Owen cleared his throat. "Mrs. Holloway's hosting a small dinner tonight. Sort of an introduction for you to some of the townspeople. Would you like to attend?" The dinner proved less intimidating than Rose had feared. The dozen guests included the doctor and his wife, the mayor, the minister and his family, and several prominent merchants. They welcomed her warmly, asking polite questions about her interests rather than her past. Throughout the evening, Owen remained nearby, his steady presence reassuring. When they walked back to her cottage under a sky brilliant with stars, Rose found the courage to ask the question that had been troubling her. "Will you come back? To Silver Creek, I mean." Owen was quiet for several steps before answering. "My route brings me through every few months." "I see," Rose said, trying to hide her disappointment. What had she expected? That a U.S. Marshal would change his circuit for a woman he barely knew. At her door, Owen removed his hat, holding it against his chest. "Rose, what I did bringing you here, it was my duty, but I want you to know." He paused, seeming to struggle for words. "I admire your courage. It takes strength to leave everything you know, even when staying is worse." "It wasn't courage," Rose admitted. "It was desperation. Sometimes they're the same thing. In the moonlight, his features were softened, his eyes reflecting starlight. Rose felt a pull toward him. She couldn't explain this man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and treated her with nothing but respect. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving me a chance at a real life." Owen nodded, placing his hat back on his head. "Goodbye, Rose Parker. Make it a good one." He turned to leave, and Rose felt words rising in her throat, words asking him to stay, to give whatever was growing between them a chance. But she swallowed them back. He had his duty, his life. She was just beginning hers. It wouldn't be fair to either of them. "Goodbye, Owen Campbell," she called softly. "Ride safely." The weeks that followed brought challenges and joys Rose had never anticipated. Teaching proved both more difficult and more rewarding than she had imagined. The children tested her at first, but soon responded to her genuine interest in their progress. The townspeople gradually accepted her, inviting her to Sunday dinners and community gatherings. Letters arrived occasionally from Mrs. Campbell in Denver, Owen's mother, offering friendship and advice. Through her, Rose learned bits of Owen's movements across the territory, taking comfort in knowing he was safe in his dangerous profession. As autumn deepened into winter, Silver Creek prepared for Christmas. Rose threw herself into organizing a holiday pageant with her students, finding unexpected happiness in creating the celebration she had been denied in recent years. Her cottage became a home, decorated with student artwork and books borrowed from the town's small library. The nightmares about her father came less frequently. Sometimes she wondered what had become of him, whether he regretted his actions or even missed her. She had written him one letter, telling him she was safe and well, but asking that he not seek her out. Whether he had received it or honored her request, she didn't know. On the last day of school before Christmas break, Rose dismissed her students early after their successful pageant performance. Gathering her shawl against the snow that had begun to fall, she locked the schoolhouse and turned toward her cottage. A figure on horseback waited at the corner, and her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the buckskin horse and its rider. For a moment, she thought her mind was playing tricks. He wasn't due through Silver Creek for another month, according to his mother's last letter. "Owen," she called, quickening her steps. He dismounted, removing his hat as she approached. Snow dusted his shoulders and caught in his beard, which was neatly trimmed now. His eyes, when they met hers, held a warmth that banished the December chill. "Miss Parker," he greeted her formally, though his smile belied the formality. "I hear you've become quite the respected teacher." "What are you doing here?" she asked, unable to keep the pleasure from her voice. "Your mother said you wouldn't be through until January." "Requested a change in my route," he admitted. "Seems I had unfinished business in Silver Creek." Rose's pulse quickened. "What business?" "Needed to check on a witness under my protection," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "Make sure she was thriving in her new life." "And what do you find, Marshal Campbell?" Rose asked softly. Owen stepped closer, snowflakes melting on his eyelashes. "I find she doesn't look like she needs my protection anymore, but I came anyway." "Why?" He took a deep breath, uncertainty crossing his features, the first time she had seen this confident man hesitate. "Because in 3 months of riding the territory, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Because every town I visited felt empty without her in it." Rose's heart soared at his words, at the vulnerability in his expression. "I've missed you too," she whispered. "I can't offer you much, Rose," Owen said seriously. "My job keeps me traveling. It's dangerous sometimes. Not the stable life most women want." "I don't need stability," Rose replied, finding courage in his honesty. "I need kindness, respect, a man who sees me as I am." "I see you," Owen said simply. "I've seen you since that first night in the fog." He reached out slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished, and brushed a snowflake from her cheek. The gentle touch held more tenderness than Rose had known in years. "I can't stay long this visit," he warned. "3 days before I must continue to Denver." "Then we'll make them count," Rose said, surprising herself with her boldness. "And when you return next time, if you'll have me," Owen said carefully, "I thought perhaps we might discuss a more permanent arrangement. My mother has been quite insistent that it's time I settled down. Seems she's developed a correspondence with a certain schoolteacher who's captured her son's heart." Rose laughed, joy bubbling up inside her. "Mrs. Campbell is a very perceptive woman." "She is," Owen agreed, his smile warming his entire face. "She also mentioned that Denver's school district is seeking experienced teachers for the coming year." The implication was clear: a future together, perhaps in Denver, where his circuit began and ended. A life where his travels would separate them temporarily, but always bring him home to her. "I'd like that," Rose said softly. "Very much." Owen's hand moved to cup her cheek, his touch reverent. "May I kiss you, Rose Parker? I've been thinking about it since I rode away 3 months ago." Rose nodded, closing her eyes as his lips met hers, gentle at first, then with growing certainty. In that moment, standing in the falling snow outside the schoolhouse where she had found her independence, Rose knew she had found something else as well. Not just escape from cruelty, but the promise of genuine love with a man who had carried her out of the fog into a life she could never have imagined.